Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Delta V, the Rings of Saturn. As promised on the last stream, hold on, let me take out my Zin. As promised on the last stream, we will be playing a video in the background as I mine, so that the weight of the weight of commentary does not fall solely upon my shoulders. With that said, let's begin. And I'll try to have the video kind of covering up my my LiDAR display. I apologize to anyone who wants to see the LiDAR display, but I don't think anyone does. I don't think. Is the TTS system going to reconnect to YouTube? I didn't think that through. It should be fine. I left it running all night because I knew I was going to use it again. Yeah, let's just get into it. Oh, I gotta wait for my shift to be done. That's fine. Which means I have to pay wages. Alright, let's start the video. Hold on, there's a trick to this.
Cultural saturation that its title is now... Fathers are one of the most glaringly absent features of modern society. A quarter of American households are single-parent households, and at least 80% of those have no father present. Fewer and fewer couples are even bothering to get married. And fathers who do stay with their families are less and less willing or even capable of carrying out the essential act of bringing up their children. The failures of fathers are a debt laid upon the shoulders of each resulting generation, which then repeats these same failures but with even more severe results, over and over down to our current times. Today, I want to talk about two books that have this idea as a central theme. The first is a book from 1963 that warned the world about this problem in the form of a kind of chilling fable, Yukio Mishima's The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. The second is a more recent novel that eventually became a cult classic that reached such a level of cultural saturation that its title is now part of Western genetic memory.
Let me know if any of you guys think the video is covering up too much, or if it's too loud. See, I just hate how the autopilot wastes my Delta V. Like, I don't care if the ship spins.
Chances are I don't have to tell you just how insightful Yukio Mishima really was. Despite being a wildly varied, very avant-garde writer, and it bears mentioning an extremely troubled man, Mishima had a remarkable capacity.
Maybe I need to adjust my tuning.
Insight.
Not maybe I do.
When they are growing up, they might catch some purpose of themselves by each point of view, independently, individually, and there's no full purpose to give them. No standard purpose there.
Well, do you think they're going to find a purpose?
I hope so.
It's wild to hear him speaking the transatlantic accent with a Japanese accent.
It's also possible, but I don't want to presume too much about the private life of a man who is long dead, that he himself knew better than most just how much damage can be done by both absent fathers and
am I gonna hit that
fathers. And like all good writers, that personal insight made its way into his work by way of surgical excavation and careful consideration. Mishima's The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea provided a veiled but chilling warning to society of what would become of a world in which
you're flying me towards the rock, autopilot.
Basic duties.
Motherfucker.
Fight Club showed us that world. Let's do this in reverse. First, we'll talk a little about the book most of you probably already know. Fight Club, the 1996 Chuck Palahniuk novel, which was later made even more insanely popular by the 1999 film starring Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, paints a world in which men struggle against the emasculation and the meaninglessness of society with constantly escalating violence. What begins as a simple effort to know themselves quickly becomes a deliberate desire to destroy society. The narrator is soon trapped in his chaotic friend Tyler Durden's thrall, at first worshipping him and then fearing him and then trying to escape him. Tyler, meanwhile, provides a never-ending stream of observations on the nature of Western civilization, especially for men, and how all of it is artificial and meaningless. His stream of aphorisms ring chillingly true for much of the book until they come to be absorbed into the vacant personalities of his ever-growing army of followers, the so-called space monkeys, whose blind obedience to God and Father
welcome
Tyler
back, Miss
Durden
Wynn.
renders
Well, it's
the
good to see you
wisdom
here.
of these observations increasingly hollow.
The video
given the
seems too
absence
quiet.
Of real, true
quiet.
masculine virtues. Many of these aphorisms have since become part of our Western cultural
video
consciousness,
inside
such
the
as
video.
snowflake, which Tyler popularized with his speech about how no one is actually a beautiful, unique
that better?
snowflake, despite what we were all told growing up. The story builds into a piercing crescendo as Tyler and the narrator fight for control of the insane army of would-be terrorists that they have raised. Both Tyler and the nameless narrator observe multiple times throughout the book that modern society is a generation of men raised by women. Palahniuk would have some knowledge of this. Like a lot of people of his generation on down, his parents were divorced. Raised by his maternal grandparents, young Chuck witnessed his grandfather's less than admirable behavior throughout his childhood. When he turned 18, he learned that his paternal grandfather had actually murdered his paternal grandmother. There was no shortage of less than ideal fathers in his life. And no doubt he, like a lot of us, also had friends who were mostly all from broken homes. And the absence of fathers and the failure of fathers glows behind the dark fog of the entire story of Fight Club like a sizzling neon sign. Sometimes it's addressed directly. Tyler Durden, for example, never knew his own father, and once said that when he was fighting at Fight Club, he was really fighting his father. The narrator relates that he himself never saw his own father after age 6. He talks about calling him periodically to ask him for advice. He graduates from high school. What now, Dad? Dad didn't know. He got a job. What now, Dad? Dad didn't know. Meanwhile, Tyler Durden was opening his eyes to the reality of his broken society, teaching him, guiding him, even, one could say, forming him. He had given him a warped, imperfect version of a father. Like it or not, especially when Project Mayhem kicked off, Tyler was the surrogate dad for all these guys. He was teaching them how to be men in a world where that knowledge no longer seemed to exist. The narrator points out that men in America, probably in most of the West, will see their father as their model for God. If their father leaves or is weak or is a bad father, what does that say about God? And we wonder why so many millennial and Gen X men and women abandoned religion. Men will then look for a father elsewhere, sometimes in the military, sometimes in work, where their superiors and bosses become their fathers. The point is, the void is always there,
Seems
no matter
fine
what.
now. Been
Sometimes the
catching up.
absence of a father,
Excellent.
that void, gets filled by other godlike causes. The environment, your political party, your favorite sports team, all of it ultimately meaningless. A distraction to stop you from constantly running your hands over the empty hole in your life that is shaped like a good father. Another theme that permeates Fight Club is the idea of self-destruction. The idea that you
Can I
have to
pause this
break
with
down
my
your so-called
keyboard? No, I cannot.
perfect little life.
There. It makes me wonder, like, unironically, not even trying to cast shade, to what degree is, I was going to say extreme leftism, but honestly, all political extremism, especially left-wing extremism, to what degree is it just fuck you dad, you know? Because it's not difficult to find the fuck you dad in any left-wing position, you know? Modern left, not, you know, the historical, actual labor left. Not that I'm a massive fan of them, but I prefer them over the blue-haired screechers, you know? I mean, maybe if I lived at the same time as them, I wouldn't. Because they did like to pal around with the mob a whole lot. But yeah, I don't know. Actually, that's an interesting parallel to draw, isn't it? Because in the 30s, the Unionist left aligned themselves with La Cosa Nostra, the Italian mafia. And now in 2026, the left aligns themselves with the Somalian mafia. Yeah, it did occur to me, but it just jumped out at me, that parallel again. I've covered it before, but yeah.
In order to figure out who you are. A generation of men raised perfectly in homes without fathers or with weak fathers will grow up without knowing how to
God.
be men. Fathers are not.
Nope.
They won't know
Get
how
the
to
Brill in.
cultivate specifically masculine virtues and
God.
combat specifically masculine
I
flaws.
hit the wrong
In
fucking
short,
button.
it will be lopsided, missing something essential despite the fact that they are supposedly perfect and complete. They're well behaved, they're clean shaven, they know how to iron their shirts, they have degrees, they have jobs, they have a mortgage maybe, or at least their own place. They might even have girlfriends, friends, social lives, but they're lopsided and they know it. There's a reason that movie and book were so huge. People raised without fathers, especially men raised without fathers or with bad fathers, grow up lopsided, and they know it, even when their mothers are amazing. Without a good father, you don't know who you are as a man. Now, think about those perfect, complete men, like Polinick's narrator with his condo and his car and his great job. The fatherless Gen X men or millennial men who have college degrees, got good jobs, nice fixed-rate mortgages, got married, and yeah, probably also got divorced. Despite being perfect, they were missing something, lacking something, and most knew it. Like Polinick's narrator, there was a painful void in that generation of men. They filled it with fake things, material goods, money, the Super Bowl, whatever. And then they had kids, and that next generation was a little more messed up, a little less able to fake perfection with a condo and a nice leased car. And a lot of them got divorces too,
Speaking
so
of
they
being
even bothered to get
lopsided.
married. And then, eventually, we come down to the Gen Z kids. And those ones aren't even bothering to pretend to be perfect anymore. What's the point, after all? Look at the examples they have. Look at the examples of masculinity that boys have now. Whether it's roided up 15-year-olds on TikTok, or the male stars of adult videos, or some random e-daddy. Can you even imagine the boys of Generation
Hit me,
Alpha or
random
their
e-daddy.
sons?
Or at least
It's plain to see
aspiring
that men
e-daddy.
who were raised by women, that is, without fathers, are more prone to seek out e-daddies like Andrew Tate, who possess the external trappings of masculinity without actually embodying any masculine virtues. In a sense, this is like Tyler Durden, a man who also didn't have a father, hated his father for abandoning him, knew nothing about being a good man, and yet was adopted by vulnerable men raised by women as a father and even a god. But let's be honest here. For all his charm and charisma, for all his keen insight and sharply worded pieces of genuine wisdom, Tyler Durden is not a good man or a good father. He has some things right, he makes some good observations. The mere fact that he is trying to figure out how to be a man in modern society already has him head and shoulders above everyone else. Yet, he does not embody any masculine virtues. Not really. He's unstable, unreliable, and also, it's worth noting for those of you who know how the book ends, he's hollow. He's something that doesn't really exist. Women are also harmed greatly by bad fathers, or the absence of fathers. Girls who didn't have a good father won't know what a good man looks like and acts like. They won't understand men at all. Girls raised by bad men tend to gravitate to men who are bad like their dad was, thus eternally perpetuating the cycle. Girls who had no dad don't know what a man really is. They certainly don't know what makes a man good. And they judge men based solely on the only thing they know, which is themselves, women. How many women these days talk about how men are bad because they behave differently from them?
You know, the first
Women
time I
raised
watched
with
this
good
video, that
fathers
didn't jump
understand
out
the
to me.
differences between good men and good women, and more importantly, between good men and bad men.
That explains a lot
Without a
of what
dad
goes
of any
on,
kind, good or
on
bad,
Twitter, right?
Tyler Durden still managed to pick up on the fact that he was missing something important. The fruits of that loss were what he was constantly examining and preaching about to his flock of adopted, troubled sons. Tyler Durden recognized the deficits in himself and saw these magnified 1,000-fold in society. He believed that self-destruction was the one way he or any man could correct his own problems. So, if that's true, what about society? If self-destruction repairs a man, supposedly, what about destruction on a societal level? Now, let's go back 30 years to 1963, when Yukio Mishima, then 38 years old, published The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, which was translated into English 2 years later. Yukio Mishima himself is a very interesting and compelling man. He became, over the course of a difficult and brief life, a kind of modern icon to Japanese men and even Western men for what I would call remedial masculinity. Born Kimitake Hiraoka in Tokyo in 1925, the infant Kimitake was forcibly taken from his mother and father by his dominating, sickly grandmother, who then raised him like a doll or an accessory entirely in the company of women and girls. When at last he reestablished contact with his father, this relationship was quite horrible. Kimitake's father was concerned that his son, a small, sickly, pale boy, was growing up soft and undertook to make him tougher by means of various ordeals that deeply traumatized him the way only a father can, driving him deeper into his own weakness and frailty. This, by the way, is me taking what I can from his semi-autobiographical novel Confessions of a Mask, which one assumes is probably at least 70% true. Maybe he was growing up soft. Maybe the imbalanced upbringing in the house of his possessive, controlling grandmother caused his innate masculinity to atrophy to some degree. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I do know that he was dissatisfied with himself and took it upon himself to repair his weakened masculinity. Chuck Palahniuk's narrator observed that after Fight Club started, he would go to the gym, but not to perfectly sculpt his body into the aesthetic idea of masculinity, but to actually become stronger. Fight Club had shown him his weaknesses. He went to the gym to get rid of them. Kimitake was acutely aware of his own weaknesses, which to him also included his mind. His mind lacked the masculine strength he believed essential. So, he took it upon himself to correct these weaknesses. He became a bodybuilder, a scholar, a husband and father himself, and a ruthlessly self-disciplined man all around. Our guy literally studied the blade. He also wrote extensively, taking the pen name Yukio Mishima, and somewhere in there, at age 38, he wrote this book, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. Correcting ill-formed masculinity is like correcting a bone that has healed wrong. The bone broke when the father left, or was never present, or was a bad father.
For being
then
fatherless.
it healed wrong because there
In
was
that
no one
case,
there
you'd
to set
expect
the
to get
break
fuck
properly.
you, Mom.
The only way it can be fixed is by re-breaking it. Tyler Durden knew that,
Wasn't he
and
gay?
Mishima knew that.
Yeah, he was. I'm not sure if he knew he was gay until later in his life, but yeah, he was. Honestly... Okay, I got a couple things I want to say. So... The the theory, from what I understand it, is that you develop the fuck you dad attitude because you resent your father for abandoning you. Oh, god damn it.
Crap. Once again, I didn't expect it to change it to the fuck bomb.
For those just watching the VOD, he said the F-bomb, and then it changed it to the actual word. This fucking thing. But no, you can swear. I don't care. And, I don't think it really affects your YouTube reach. Welcome back, HEV Gaming. Good to see you here as well. We're, watching that video I promised we'd watch. We were just talking about how, yeah, like, for me... Like, I don't know, I don't think I have any fuck you dad energy, even though, like, my father broke my jaw, and it hurts. It doesn't really leave me in, as I've gotten more fit, the pain has kind of subsided. Like, right now my neck, if I focus on it, it hurts a little, but it's weak enough that I can ignore it. Because, 5 years ago, it was not. It was actually constant.
Hello.
Why is it so far behind also? What was I saying? But yeah, I don't think I have any of that fuck you dad energy, even though my father genuinely was a absolute monster. I don't even really think of him as human. But that may be why I turned out like I did, because he was never even a father at all. He was kind of just an animal that I had to live with. But, my father was Durandal from Marathon and Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, I got what I needed from media and not the people around me. And I had my grandfather. Although, I don't know, he was pretty shitty too, honestly. I think he was cruel out of ignorance, whereas my father was cruel out of actual malice. What was the other point I wanted to make? Oh yeah, that there's someone I follow on Twitter called Trace Woodgrains. Oh, now you don't look like a Ganymedian. We can't just let you through here. Oh, these are fucking pirates, aren't they? Are you sure you want to get on my bad side, Ringa? Ganymede for anarchy! Oh, they're fucking... Speaking of... Alright, you fatherless motherfucker. Come at me. Where are you?
Hi, Hev Gaming.
Why is it so far behind? That's really strange. Oh, it's because I was talking. Right. Well, we know the VAD works now, at least. Well, let me put the video back on. I forgot what I was going to say.
The story of Mishima's novel is deceptively simple for its immensely complex themes. Told mostly from the perspective of a young boy named Noboru, the tale follows him as he is raised by his widowed businesswoman mother. But Noboru has secrets. Very dark secrets. Already in the first pages of the story, it's clear that Noboru is a troubled boy, even though the shape and nature of his troubles aren't clear for some time. He has taken to observing his mother through a hole between their bedrooms, even when she has men over. He doesn't seem to love her or despise her, but has grown indifferent. He doesn't care when she disciplines him, and he doesn't respect her discipline, precociously aware that her rules and authority are dependent entirely upon her mood,
1800
and thus
AV.
Delta
nothing.
V, but yeah.
Unbeknownst to any adults, Noboru's entire personality had recently fallen under the influence of an older, seemingly
1800
wiser
meters
boy
per second
known
of
only
Delta V
as
specifically.
the Chief. This boy commands the respect of a whole group of young boys, all of whom share one common trait. They are, in some way, the victims of bad fathers. Some have fathers who drunkenly beat them, some have fathers who are constantly cheating on their mothers, and some have fathers who are merely weak, fathers who never discipline them, who never involve themselves in their upbringing, but just ply them with gifts in order to win their affections. Noboru is an envied member of this group, as he has no father at all, and thus has achieved what the Chief would deem a certain type of perfection. Of course, these boys don't realize it, but it is clear to any adult who reads this book that the Chief has built his philosophical stance against fathers and fatherhood as a response to trauma. The story heavily implies that he has suffered unthinkable things at the hands of his own father, a suffering he merely calls worse than beatings, leaving it to his followers' imaginations to guess what that might be. His hatred for fatherhood as an office and for the men who take up the role of fathers is absolute. This hatred of fathers extends outward into a hatred for society. To the Chief, society could not be respected because fatherhood could not be respected. To the Chief, the failure of a father meant the failure of society. The way he saw it, because fathers were so repulsive, that meant society was meaningless. In addition to his blind faith in the Chief, a second thing defines our young Noboru, and that is a deep love for the sea and an admiration for anyone who serves the sea, especially sailors. When Noboru's mother takes up with a sailor, Noboru's observations of this man prove to him that a man such as this, who has thrown off the self, thrown off social responsibility, and devoted himself entirely to the service of the sea, was the ultimate proof of the Chief's teachings. The very non-father sailor, utterly disconnected from society and beholden only to the great beauty of the ocean, was the perfect embodiment of adult masculinity to Noboru, an idea that was approved by the Chief. But then disaster struck. The sailor fell in love with Noboru's mother, and he became fond of little Noboru. He decided to give up his beloved life as a sailor in order to settle down and form a family. In doing this, as Noboru saw it, he fell from grace with the sea. Noboru's disappointment was only matched by his hatred. This man, the perfect man, had demeaned himself into that hateful state, fatherhood. What was worse, now Noboru would possess one of those hated things, a father. Something had to be done. And so the Chief proposed a simple solution. All of them were minors still. Japanese law at that time held no sway over them. They could commit any crime and nothing would be done to them. Working together, they would kill the sailor. Noboru's would-be father would be the boy's ultimate sacrifice. They would kill him, and in so doing would reject fatherhood, reject society, reject the broken, meaningless world in which fathers were weak, odious, soft men, or otherwise villains of the worst sort. The tragedy at the heart of this book was that the sailor was actually doing something good. He was taking responsibility for this boy. He wanted to be a father to him because he was fond of him. Yet, in the brief glimpses Mishima gives us of his inner thoughts, this motivation is imperfect. Maybe imperfect fatherhood is enough some of the time, but it was clear in the book that the sailor mainly wanted to please the son in order to remain with the mother, which Noboru sensed. The sailor also chose not to discipline him, even when he deserved it, in order to avoid alienating him, a slight Noboru interpreted as the ultimate weakness, and proof of everything the chief had said. This grew more complex over time as he tried to bond with Noboru,
What's wrong
feeling
with my
satisfaction in the
sensors?
idea of being a father to the boy, himself coming into his own and maturing into the idea that he now had a responsibility for the boy's formation. The realization made him anxious and happy.
Odd.
He had found a purpose, and a beautiful one.
never seen
Whether
a
or
game
not
do
his
that
motives
before.
were pure is hard to determine, as we mostly saw
I need
him
to
from
reboot
Noboru's
my computer?
perspective. But regardless of why, he was trying. It's difficult to understand the motivations of all the boys, especially the chief. To them, killing Noboru's fallen sailor was frightening but important. They knew the gravity of what they were doing and sought to do it anyway. Of course, we the readers understand that whether or not the sailor's intentions were pure, killing him was deeply unjust. The boys were wrong, of course. But the greatest responsibility of all was with the boys' fathers, especially the chief's father. The tragedy and the lesson there is that the chief could only become as warped as he was if he had been the victim of catastrophically bad fathering. The evil of a bad father produced a boy who was eager and willing to kill a man who was trying to be a good father because he was trying to be a good father. Like Tyler Durden 30 years later, the chief had become a kind of father and god to the boys who followed him, because they all had a void in them in the shape of a strong authoritarian male figure, and the chief, like Tyler
I'd say
Durden,
she should
fit
be
that
saying
shape
authority
despite
in
how
place of
misshapen
society.
he was himself. His
Interesting.
bad father had made
That's
him
an
into
interesting
a bad
thought.
father, and his own bad fathering was going to lead not just to an innocent man's death, to a potentially good father's death, but also would lead a group of children into becoming cold-blooded murderers. Bad fathers, Mishima shows us, are corrosive, not just to the individual, but to society. One generation of bad fathers can cause so much harm to a civilization that it might never recover. In this case, one generation of bad fathers was directly responsible for the next generation losing all respect for good fathers. Will those boys ever recover from murdering the sailor? Will Noboru? Since none of them will be punished by the law, they will all go on to have normal lives, and their parents will probably just hope that they forget the whole affair. But they won't. They were formed by their adopted father into murderers, because he had been formed by his bad father into an angry, traumatized sociopath. They will remember his lessons, that fatherhood is in itself evil, and so they will either never become fathers, or they will become evil, self-hating fathers like the chief. And the cycle will repeat and repeat forever. But remember, it's not just evil fathers who produce this warping, it is also weak fathers. Many of the boys under the chief's guidance had fathers who were merely pathetic men. While some of the fathers beat their sons or their wives, some were just bad fathers. Men who cheated on their wives, men who preferred to go drinking with their friends instead of helping raise their children, men who, at all turns, shirked their responsibility.
Yeah, fuck
One
you,
father
Rock.
did nothing but
How's it feel?
pray all day long, neglecting his family and his children, yet insisting that this constant prayer made their house a good house. Their sons despised them, and they were deeply wounded by their presence in their lives, so much so that they were open to the chief's teachings, that no father was acceptable, that all fathers were evil, and that the mere act of fathering a child was unforgivable. Boys raised by weak men were easily influenced into committing a cruel, calculated murder. The chief, broadly, became their father. Whether or not the boys knew it, whether or not the chief knew it, he had become their father. They had taken him as such, because that void, like all vacuums, will always be filled, like it or not. They let him teach them, train them, condition them, form them, and even order them into action. And his teachings were the fruit of an observant mind warped by the malice of a bad father. The chief wasn't stupid, he was intelligent, but he was warped and misshapen. He trained the boys in his care to shun sex and anything sexual and to be unmoved by the entire concept, not out of a sense of decency or self-control, but because sex was the thing that fathered children. And according to the chief, men ought to only have sex with the stars, which I guess makes sense if you're 12. He trained the boys not to be moved by material
That's
goods
some of the,
or by empty flattery,
doesn't know
but
he's
not
gay
because they
stuff
needed to
coming through.
master themselves, but because, it would seem, everything good was a lie, a point that he often repeated but never observation. School is just society in miniature. That's why we're always being ordered around. A bunch of blind men tell us what to do, tear our limited ability to shreds. In fact, a lot of what the chief had to say had a germ of truth in it, much like Tyler Durden. In fact, there are a number of surprising parallels between Mishima's novel and Polinick's. This is a problem. Like Fight Club's nameless narrator, Noboru and his group, the chief's followers, came from good homes, with conscientious mothers who saw to it that they were well-fed, clean, presentable, and well-behaved, admirable students. Their mothers, in short, were doing excellent jobs, but their fathers were negligent or actively harmful, which is often the same thing. Like Tyler Durden and his Fight Club, the chief believed that destruction was necessary. Rather than fight each other, however, he would lead the boys in other acts of violence, such as killing small animals. These acts, the chief insisted, would fill the world's great hollows. Then they would achieve real power over existence. Once again, talk of filling a void. Self-destruction, of a somewhat more controlled variety, was believed by this group to be essential. Killing small animals was the first step, according to the chief, who used these acts to explain the chaos of life. To kill these small creatures was to allow them to be perfected. It also allowed them, the boys, mastery over their soft emotions. This way, they would be ready for the final act of perfection, killing the sailor. Just as Polinick's narrator had done, Mishima's 13-year-old chief asked his father what was the purpose of life. For what reason did he go on living? His father had no real answer. A father, the chief said, is a reality-concealing machine, and secretly he believes that he drove the men of Fight Club to take Tyler Durden not just as a father but as a god or a symbol of reality. So too did the boys of Mishima's book treat their chief. The men of Fight Club blindly followed Tyler despite the fact that he had nothing to offer in terms of actual masculine virtues. The same was true for the chief. The boys were blindly obedient to his teachings and his will. Even when it came to killing a person, they went along, blindly following their adopted bad father, whose presence in their lives had been meant to fill a terribly painful void. Yet, what would they have known about good fathers? None of them had ever seen one. The closest any of the boys came to a good father was Noboru and his sailor. 1963 and 1996 were not the only times in modern history when people noticed that strange phenomenon. Strong, powerful fathers, generally speaking, were becoming a thing of the past. And as a result, more and more boys were growing up without the influence or example of strong men. Even when their mothers were excellent, these fatherless boys didn't know how to be men, much less fathers, as they had no familiarity with either concept. The only adult example available to boys was a female one, and the greatest mother in history is not a father. For the record, mothers and fathers are equally important. I'm not saying fathers are more important than mothers. What I am saying is that both are important because both bring different, equally crucial things to the formation of children, which the other cannot. An amazing mother cannot be a father. An amazing father cannot be a mother. Bad mothers are also bad for men and women, but this isn't a video about mothers, but about fathers. This epidemic of fatherlessness, which has become the norm, has in turn resulted in a crisis of masculinity.
Uh-oh.
Even good men don't know how to be good fathers and are forced to do the best they can with limited knowledge and almost no support. It's difficult to be a good person. It's difficult to be a good woman or a good man. It's extremely hard to be a good mother or a good father.
Sorry, my whole computer just locked up. Are we still live? Let me see if I can kill some browser windows. Hold on. Get rid of that. Oh god. No, the machine's chugging. Hold on. Get out of here. I can't close my browser windows.
You are live.
Okay, thank you. It's good to know. Close, close, close. Oh, you know what's happening? I left freaking Claude code running, and it's doing the thing that it does. God damn it, Claude. There we go. Okay, let me run htop. What are we doing here? What is this? What the fuck? Oh, is that my, Okay. I'm going to kill this Brave process. I'm not sure what this will do.
I think men are inherently looking for attractive examples in a squad to help them get ahead. Yeah, the video is stuck.
It's not stuck, I just paused it. And welcome to the stream, Emil8000. Good to see you here. We're playing Delta V Rings of Saturn. Oh! The window I just closed was the one with the video. Well, that makes sense. Right. That should have occurred to me that would happen. Okay, I can bring that back. I can bring that back.
Hi, Emil.
Fathers are one of the most glaringly absent features of modern society. Fathers who are merely weak. Fathers who never discipline them, who never involve themselves in their upbringing, but just ply them with gifts in order to win their affection.
I don't think it was here.
But to actually become stronger. Fight.
Yeah, we'll
the
start
story
over
of
from
Mishima's
here, I
novel
guess.
is deceptively simple for its...
Wait.
But then disaster struck. The sailor fell in love with Noboru's mother, and he became fond of Herman, as we mostly saw him from Noboru's perspective. But regardless, society rejects
that's
the broken,
closest
meaningless world in which fathers were weak, odious, soft men, or otherwise villains of the worst sort. The tragedy at the heart of this book was that the sailor was actually doing something good. He was taking responsibility for this boy. He wanted to be a father to him.
We're going to have some
because he was
overlap,
fond
but
of
that's
him.
okay.
Yet, in the brief glimpses Mishima gives us of his inner thoughts, this motivation is imperfect. Maybe imperfect fatherhood is enough some of the time, but it was clear in the book that the sailor mainly wanted to please the son in order to remain with the mother, which Noboru sensed. The sailor also chose not to discipline him,
that's way
even
too far.
when he deserved it, in order to avoid alienating him. A slight Noboru interpreted as the ultimate
Game footage
weakness,
is stuck.
and proof of everything the chief had said. This grew more complex over time as he tried to bond with Noboru, feeling satisfaction in the idea of being a father
footage
to the
appears
boy,
to be stuck
himself
for me.
coming
The
into
video
his
is
own
fine,
and
though.
maturing into the idea that he now had a responsibility for the boy's formation. The realization made him anxious and happy. He had found a purpose. And
By the way, do any of you guys want different voices? I don't know if you, like HEV wants I don't know if you want a female voice. I can easily change it.
a beautiful one. Whether or not his motives were pure is hard to determine, as we mostly saw him from Noboru's perspective. But regardless of why, he was trying. It's difficult to understand the motivations of all the boys, especially the chief. To them, killing Noboru's fallen sailor was frightening but important. They knew the gravity of what they were doing and sought to do it anyway.
All right.
Of course, we the readers understand that whether or not the sailor's intentions were pure, killing him was deeply unjust. The boys were wrong, of course. But the greatest responsibility of all was with the boys' fathers, especially the chief's father. The tragedy and the lesson there is that the chief could only become as warped as he was if he had been the victim of catastrophically bad fathering. The evil of a bad father produced a boy who was eager and willing to kill a man who was trying to be a good father because he was trying to be a good father. Like Tyler Durden 30 years later, the chief had become a kind of father and god to the boys who followed him, because they all had a void in them in the shape of a strong authoritarian male figure, and the chief, like Tyler Durden, fit that shape despite how misshapen he was himself. His bad father had made him into a bad father, and his own bad fathering was going to lead not just to an innocent man's death, to a potentially good father's death, but also would lead a group of children into becoming cold-blooded murderers. Bad fathers, Mishima shows us, are corrosive, not just to the individual, but to society. One generation of bad fathers can cause so much harm to a civilization that it might never recover. In this case, one generation of bad fathers was directly responsible for the next generation losing all respect for good fathers. Will those boys ever recover from murdering the sailor, Will Noboru? Since none of them will be punished by the law, they will all go on to have normal lives, and their parents will probably just hope that they forget the whole affair. But they won't. They were formed by their adopted father into murderers, because he had been formed by his bad father into an angry, traumatized sociopath. They will remember his lessons, that fatherhood is in itself evil, and so they will either never become fathers, or they will become evil, self-hating fathers like the chief. And the cycle will repeat and repeat forever. But remember, it's not just evil fathers who produce this warping, it is also weak fathers. Many of the boys under the chief's guidance had fathers who were merely pathetic men. While some of the fathers beat their sons or their wives, some were just bad fathers. Men who cheated on their wives, men who preferred to go drinking with their friends instead of helping raise their children, men who, at all turns, shirked their responsibility. One father did nothing but pray all day long, neglecting his family and his children, yet insisting that this constant prayer made their house a good house. Their sons despised them, and they were deeply wounded by their presence in their lives, so much so that they were open to the chief's teachings, that no father was acceptable, that all fathers were evil, and that the mere act of fathering a child was unforgivable. Boys raised by weak men were easily influenced into committing a cruel, calculated murder. The chief, broadly, became their father. Whether or not the boys knew it, whether or not the chief knew it, he had become their father. They had
now I gotta
taken him as
pay my employee's
because
salary
that void,
for
like
10
all
days.
vacuums, will always be
Not
filled,
doing any work.
like it or not. They let him teach them, train them, condition them, form them, and even order them into action. And his teachings were the fruit of an observant mind warped by the malice of a bad father. The chief wasn't stupid, he was intelligent, but he was warped and misshapen. He trained the boys in his care to shun sex and anything sexual and to be unmoved by the entire concept, not out of a sense of decency or self-control, but because sex was the thing that fathered children. And according to the chief, men ought to only have sex with the stars, which I guess makes sense if you're 12. He trained the boys not to be moved by material goods or by empty flattery, but not because they needed to master themselves, but because, it would seem, everything good was a lie, a point that he often repeated but never really expanded upon. The chief also made this astute observation. School is just society in miniature. That's why we're always being ordered around. A bunch of blind men tell us what to do, tear our limited ability to shreds. In fact, a lot of what the chief had to say had a germ of truth in it, much like Tyler Durden. In fact, there are a number of surprising parallels between Mishima's novel and Polanyick's. This is a problem. Like Fight Club's nameless narrator, Noboru and his group, the chief's followers, came from good homes, with conscientious mothers who saw to it that they were well-fed, clean, presentable, and well-behaved, admirable students. Their mothers, in short, were doing excellent jobs, but their fathers were negligent or actively harmful, which is often the same thing. Like Tyler Durden and his Fight Club, the chief believed that destruction was necessary. Rather than fight each other, however, he would lead the boys in other acts of violence, such as killing small animals. These acts, the chief insisted, would fill the world's great hollows. Then they would achieve real power over existence. Once again, talk of filling a void. Self-destruction, of a somewhat more controlled variety, was believed by this group to be essential. Killing small animals was the first step, according to the chief, who used these acts to explain the chaos of life. To kill these small creatures was to allow them to be perfected. It also allowed them, the boys, mastery over their soft emotions. This way, they would be ready for the final act of perfection, killing the sailor. Just as Polanyick's narrator had done, Mishima's 13-year-old chief asked his father what was the purpose of life. For what reason did he go on living? His father had no real answer. A father, the chief said, is a reality-concealing machine, and secretly he believes that he represents reality. Just as the absence of fathers or the presence of bad fathers drove the men of Fight Club to take Tyler Durden not just as a father but as a god or a symbol of reality, so too did the boys of Mishima's book treat their chief. The men of Fight Club blindly followed Tyler despite the fact that he had nothing to offer in terms of actual masculine virtues. The same was true for the chief. The boys were blindly obedient to his teachings and his will, even when it came to killing a person. They went along, blindly following their adopted bad father, whose presence in their lives had been meant to fill a terribly painful void. Yet, what would they have known about good fathers? None of them had ever seen one. The closest any of the boys came to a good father was Noboru and his sailor. 1963 and 1996 were not the only times in modern history when people noticed that strange phenomenon. Strong, powerful fathers, generally speaking, were becoming a thing of the past. And as a result, more and more boys were growing up without the influence or example of strong men. Even when their mothers were excellent, these fatherless boys didn't know how to be men, much less fathers, as they had no familiarity with either concept. The only adult example available to boys was a female one, and the greatest mother in history is not a father. For the record, mothers and fathers are equally important. I'm not saying fathers are more important than mothers. What I am saying is that both are important because both bring different, equally crucial things to the formation of children, which the other cannot. An amazing mother cannot be a father. An amazing father cannot be a mother. Bad mothers are also bad for men and women, but this isn't a video about mothers, but about fathers. This epidemic of fatherlessness, which has become the norm, has in turn resulted in a crisis of masculinity. Even good men don't know how to be good fathers and are forced to do the best they can with limited knowledge and almost no support. It's difficult to be a good person. It's difficult to be a good woman or a good man. It's extremely hard to be a good mother or a good father. It's hard because it's important. It's important because failure or negligence is catastrophic. Mishima warned us, Polinick showed us. Great literature has this power, the power to let the world see itself in a way that is unflattering. I personally also find it compelling to encounter books that deliver similar themes despite being separated by cultures and eras. I'd be curious if any of you know of any other particularly compelling works of literature from around the world that work with this theme of the dangers of fatherless society. If so, please mention them in the comments. I'm always eager for more book discussion. Speaking of book discussion, if you're interested in joining my book club, this would be a great time. We're just about to start a new book. Details are available in the link below. Thank you all for watching to the end, and as always, I'll see you next time.
Alright, I guess I could have just ended the video at that point, actually, because we pretty much just watched it twice, but whatever. But yeah. Yeah, the whole thing of one generation of fathers, of bad fathers, can doom all of society. I don't know. Pretty dark. Probably also true. But you can do like what I did and turn to media.
I think that during tribal times, and to a lesser degree during pre-modernity, it's been very common for boys to grow up without a father or to not know who their father is.
Yeah, I don't know. I know because in some cultures...
It's more than men nowadays have gotten feminine.
You know, I'm not sure...
And therefore fathers.
Yeah. I'm not sure saying that men are feminine is quite correct. I don't think femininity is the absence of masculinity. But I might be wrong. The thing is, I have a problem with this idea of... Not the idea, the name. Like, the idea is obviously correct. I'm not sure how... I object to the word feminized society. That's a phrase, not a word, but whatever. Because in a vacuum, if you told me to visualize an extremely feminine society, I would imagine something that values care, where everyone is taken care of, where everyone's feelings are taken into consideration, where a society that elevates beauty and purity, really. I think that's what I would imagine if you said, we're talking about a feminized society. But that's not what we see. We see a society where empathy, the idea of compassion for people who are different from you is mocked.
I don't think women are big on beauty and purity.
Well, that's definitely not correct, because, if you think of...
Care for sure.
If you think of, if you were going to give a gift to a woman, you would give her flowers, jewelry, art, something made out of nice cloth. Women care a lot about beauty. I think they are very much inherently attracted to it. But our society degrades beauty. Just look at the whole Sydney Sweeney thing, the jeans ad. It's... Now, that is an example of female intersexual competition, which is the source of a lot of our problems. But characterizing it as a plethora of femininity, I think is definitely incorrect.
It's about the sacrifice, not the inherent value of the gift.
I don't think so.
Our society, meaning Twitter activists?
Well, yeah, it is a fact that, social media is not real life. And the people you see, the tweets you see are from the craziest people. Because normal people don't post on Twitter, and if they do, they don't go anywhere, But it is also a fact that a lot of our politicians, and most Democrat politicians, are Twitter activists. So it's not like you can just not deal with them because they hold most of the power in society. I don't know. But yeah, I think saying our society is too feminine, I think, is a mistake. Our society is... the Western civilization, it's very Mean Girls. It's the dark feminine, specifically. It's not the positive feminine. We have a pluripotence of negative femininity. We have devouring mothers, I don't know. Now, what do we do about that? I don't know. But this is the operations room. U.S. Rangers and Filipino guerrillas rescue 500 prisoners of war at the Great Raid. I don't know anything about this one, so I'm going into it blind as well as you.
The date is the 14th of December 1944. At 1 p.m., Japanese army trucks arrive at the Puerto Princesa prison camp on the Philippine island of Palawan and disembark 150 emancipated American prisoners of war.
Emancipated?
The POWs had spent the morning repairing the nearby airfield, which has been bombed by the Allies as they fight to retake the Philippines from the Japanese. The POWs trudge through the front gate and into the courtyard, where they are served lunch, a single handful of weevilly rice. These men are survivors of the 1942 Bataan campaign and the ensuing death march, which killed upwards of 18,000 Allied prisoners of war. The air raid siren sounds shortly after the men sit down, but only a handful of American fighters are spotted in the distance. The tired and hungry prisoners ignore the warning and continue eating their meals. However, the air raid sirens sound a second and then a third time in short order, despite clear skies above Puerto Princesa. The Japanese camp commandant, Lieutenant Yoshikazu Sato, storms into the courtyard, screaming at the POWs to head for the shelters. They're coming. Planes, hundreds of planes. The prisoners are becoming suspicious. Sato and the Japanese guards have never shown much regard for their safety. Lieutenant Sato has often made the prisoners work on the airfield during Allied bombing raids, leading to at least one casualty. Still, he continues to shout. Hundreds of planes, hurry! With guards surrounding them with fixed bayonets, the men have little choice but to file into the shelters, which are mere slit trenches, covered with logs and sheet metal. Navy signalman C.C. Smith refuses to go into his shelter, perhaps sensing that something is wrong. An enraged Lieutenant Sato unsheathes his sword and executes Smith on the spot.
The society is feminine in the sense that women have more power.
Hurriedly
True.
squeeze into their shelters.
Is
Others
that you
approach
get-
the shelters with lighted bamboo torches.
You get too much.
Soldiers
You don't get the
quickly
light
hide
feminine
aviation
because it's
fuel
out
at
of
the
balance.
entrances to the shelter,
You get only
leaving
the
little
dark
doubt
feminine.
What is about to happen next?
Maybe.
Before the prisoners
Yeah,
can
you're
react,
probably right.
The guards toss the bamboo torches into the petrol-soaked air raid shelters.
Jesus.
The following afternoon, a Filipino guerrilla fighter is patrolling the western shore of Puerto Princesa Bay when a ragged, bloodied man staggers towards him. Recognizing the man as
Consequently,
an American and not a
women get
Japanese
to act
soldier,
out their natures instead of being constrained by the rules created
the
by
guerrilla
men.
offers him water. The wounded man
Yeah. So, human beings are the product of evolution, and human cultures are also the product of cultural evolution. Although that's not super relevant to what I'm about to say, so skip that one. Human beings are the product of evolution. So, evolution turns inevitability into necessity. Mammals evolved, or all, all vertebrate life, or not even vertebrate life, all eukaryotic life, evolved in an environment where oxygen was omnipresent, so we are dependent on oxygen. We evolved in a environment where vitamin C was omnipresent, so we are utterly dependent on vitamin C. In fact, humans and guinea pigs are the only animals, the only living things, well, I don't know about living things, but the only animals that can't make their own vitamin C. Because we evolved in an environment where there was vitamin C in all our food, so some common ancestor of all humans had a mutation that destroyed his ability to make vitamin C. You better not try to murder me. Are you here to challenge Lucky Success to a race? No. I'm not geared up. Let's meet in a week. Sure, I guess. What was I saying?
Man, you really need more power on that ship of yours.
It's fine. We're making it work. Now, when I get the next big haul, we'll have to do a reactor upgrade. Or a turbine upgrade. Probably the reactor. Because I already have my reactor overclocked. So, one of the inevitabilities that was present in our ancestral environment was men and women. So I think it is reasonable to conclude that we probably evolved to need both. You need a mother and a father. And you need men and women both around you in your social sphere to be a fully functional human being. It will cause some kind of mental disorder, probably, to be raised in that extremely unbalanced environment. So, also, societies evolve. So we notice, looking through history, that there tends to be a sort of a pendulum effect where power will shift to men, men will become unbalanced, such as in ancient Rome, and in, Rome at the time of its fall, and sometimes you see a society that puts too much power in the hands of women, such as modern-day the United States and most of the West, most of the English-speaking world. So I don't think it is ever right to say that I would say that neither the masculine nor the feminine should rule alone. I think it is pretty clear that you are supposed to, and I say supposed to in the sense of evolutionary necessity, again, necessity into, or inevitability into necessity. I think it is pretty clear that you are supposed to have both, and there is supposed to be some kind of balance. Now, whether the ideal balance is exactly 50-50, that's unproven. It should, I think, probably a truly healthy society is more like 60-40 in favor of men. But then I would say that, right? Because I'm a man raised in an ultra-feminized society. I'm out of fucking mass driver ammo, god damn it. I made 12 grand. God damn it. That was a shit run. Alright. Where was I going with all this? Yeah, basically, I think you and, everyone on Twitter, I think, are right that much of our problem is that we have put way too much power in the hands of women. And that is not to say women should not have power, it's just that imbalance brings out the worst in women.
Well, it's not a contest, of course.
Of course. We are all on the same side here. But you wouldn't know that by talking to most women these days. I don't know if it's even most. Oh, she's mad because I can't pay her. Well, I got a nuclear reactor to fix here, sorry.
But women are wired to see it as a contest.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. Because... yeah, I don't know. I just don't know enough to have a really informed opinion. Maybe we should do some research. Can we come up with a testable hypothesis? Can we come up with a direction for our research? The question is, the testable hypothesis is women have an instinctive urge to seek power, and specifically to seek an imbalance in power in society. No, that's not necessary, because individual women seeking power would cause an imbalance. And it's pretty well understood that the will to power is universal among humans. Just because, again, in the environment of evolutionary adaptation, the more power you have, the greater your odds of survival.
I kind of babbled there.
Yeah, it's all right. We're just throwing shit out to see what sticks. Throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. That's the nature of conversation, of an intellectual conversation. So, in some way, you're right that yes, women are wired to seek power because they are human, and humans are wired to seek power. However, it really seems to me, okay, I have a theory now. I think that generally, so the will to power definitely seems to be weaker in women, just because, usually in most societies, men seek positions of power. They seek to get to the top of the corporate ladder, or they run for public office way, way, way more often. And, feminists will ascribe this to sexism, but that doesn't make any sense. Why would it be common to all cultures in all history, right? Excuse me.
I meant to be opposed to men in general. And to be dismissive of any claims by men of being better than them.
I don't know. Opposed to men in general definitely sounds wrong. Because, like, women care a lot about their sons. Healthy women, anyway. Mentally healthy. And they usually care about... Yeah, I mean...
The default view is that all men are trash.
I don't agree. My theory is that that is another one of those fucking Soviet psyops. Which we know that...
And they're looking for an exception. As a partner.
Ah. That makes a lot more sense. How does that cash out? How does that lead to women seeking power and causing a power imbalance? Because my thought is basically they got psyoped into it by the commies. You know, the Soviets supported the feminist movement, and the feminist movement said, you know, indoctrinated them that all men are inherently evil and you need to seek power to protect yourself. And, you know, in Western universities now, they have gender studies classes, and they explicitly teach you that all men are programmed to rape. Every man in this classroom is fantasizing about raping you right now. So you can imagine why women would be like, you know, women who didn't just roll their eyes at that, which I'm sure many of them did. I mean, I know for a fact many of them do, because we see good, sensible women on the internet, like Miss Kirsha or Pippa. Pippa's her own thing. Can I think of any other examples? There's women on Twitter that are pretty reasonable as to that. The Teach Robots Love lady, what was her name? Catherine D.
I'm afraid that's a natural instinct.
Well, the thing is, your theory proves too much. Because if that was true, then would we not see an imbalance in every society? Would we not see widespread power-seeking among women in every society? Which we don't. We only see it in the West from about 1960 on, which is when the Soviet Union started infiltrating all our institutions. I don't know. And I'm sure, like I said, everyone has, you know, humans in general have an inherent will to power. But, and your theory that, okay, you know, women instinctively think that all men are garbage and they're looking for an exception. For one, the problem with that is that women like violent men. Like, women will look at a violent criminal, they'll look at a mass shooter, and say, well, he wouldn't hurt me. You know, every you know, pornography meant for women features fucking werewolves and shit. And it's like, oh, he won't tear me apart. Well, he might tear me apart, you know, he might beat me a little, but he's, you know, he's just so hot. But that disproves that they're looking for that as that disproves that they're looking for the exception, not that they by default think men are evil. But I don't know, that just doesn't ring true with my experiences. Now, it is absolutely true that women tend to have a very low opinion of men who are strangers, generally. Is that true? No, I think that's just today. That's a today thing. I don't think that's true across all cultures and times. Because, like, when you do cold approach, it's very interesting. I tweeted about this. It's interesting when you do cold approach, when you walk up to a woman just at the pool or something and you say, hey, my name's Ro. You know, are you from around here? What's your name? You say stuff like that. You can see them just have this look of disgust at you. And then as soon as you give them an intelligent reply to something they said, suddenly... there's a Twitter checkmark joke. Suddenly they, that look of disgust goes away, like all at once, and suddenly they see you as a human being. It's really interesting. So yeah, I'm sure women have some instinctive... Well, they probably have an instinctive suspicion of men that they see as being from outside their tribe. But it is pretty clear that mentally healthy women who have not been propagandized into being evil will generally look at the men, they look to the men around them as protectors and providers, and they generally have an instinctive drive to nurture and comfort them. In the healthiest societies that I've been in, like my church and some of the clubs that I'm in, generally that's the behavior I see.
Yes. In the distant past, women only engaged with men they knew. That is, members of their tribe.
Well, they didn't necessarily only engage with men in their tribe, because sometimes foreign invaders come and do the things that foreign invaders do.
Women only want to nurture children.
That is definitely not true, because some of the women I know are, like, especially towards me, they're actually very nurturing. I was talking to... Okay, this is embarrassing, but the whole point of this channel is to embarrass myself, isn't it? So I don't really, know anybody. I'm kind of a total social pariah. Let me launch the ring dive while I gotta fix my... I think this run may be dead. I don't think I can fix my reactor. But,
That's a substitute then, like pets.
I don't think so. I don't think it's substitution, especially because... As a matter of fact, I see more of this nurturing behavior, specifically in women who already have children. But it is also true that a lot of women that I have, when women find out that you're wounded, definitely in high school, because high school and now are the only times that I've been around women. I was locked in a basement most of my life. But definitely in high school, if I ever showed any vulnerability, they seem to instinctively be driven to attack, just like everybody. Well, no, actually, it was mostly women. Now that I think of it, because other dudes would be like, "Oh yeah, you're having some trouble there, aren't you?" Whereas women would be like, "Oh, what's wrong with that guy? We should fuck with him." But, so I go to the strip club and pay strippers to hold me, because I'm actually developing dementia from extreme isolation. So, and a couple of the, there's a pair of ladies at the local club who I do that with, and over time they've become very, very nurturing and kind to me, and I had a conversation with one of them where they said, "Man, where did this new confident row come from?" And I'm like, "Well, it came from you and, hug lady number 1 and hug lady number 2, giving me so much love and care over the years that, I became a stronger man." And that made her really happy when I said that. So clearly women have some instinctive drive to nurture men who they perceive as being in their social sphere. Yeah, that was my point. Okay, I guess my engine is as good as I'm gonna get it.
Okay, I don't know. That's a very specific group.
Yeah. But also, women I know outside of that, remember way back when we watched that PSA about...
Might have atypical results.
Maybe. But I mean, also you got to remember this is a strip club in the Bible Belt. It's not like it's a different kind of thing to one in a big city. It's a very sleepy, you know. In the Midwest, even the sex industry is wholesome. You know? Yeah, but strippers are still women. They don't continue being a stripper after they leave. Well, I mean, they do. But it's not. Also, these are very, these are the least brain-scrambled women at the club, also. But you do have a point that that is a very specific group. But I have also seen similar behavior in women that I know outside of there. So you remember when we did that propaganda watch-along where we were watching a video on women in the military, and I mentioned I've met women who I absolutely would fall into combat. They were they're very competent military leaders. Well, I say women. I met one woman who I absolutely would fall into combat. And like, she also has been very nurturing to me. It's in a relatively hard-assed way, because she's a relatively hard-assed woman, but nonetheless, she also shows a lot of nurturing behavior towards me. Yep, that's a rock. Okay, luckily it didn't hit anything. Oh, all right, free tungsten. Let me just get that into my gullet. So yeah, I think, and I'm sure if we pulled up Claude and had him do a literature review, I'm sure we would find scientific evidence that women do show an inherent nurturing drive.
You know, men also show nurturing behavior.
Oh, absolutely true. But I think it's pretty clear that, I think it's pretty self-evident that nurturing is a feminine behavior.
I thought that was a lot of what the skull chick meant by good fathers.
You know you can hold right-click to orient, right?
I do know that, but I wasn't using it. But also, I actually disagree that what is her name? We'll just call her Skull Chick. That Skull Chick, I'm pretty sure her conception of a good father has more to do with discipline, because she even mentioned that
the Scully chick.
There goes all my fucking thrusters. God damn it. I got no thrust. Like, she explicitly brought up the discipline. I think it is pretty clear that I think that her idea of a good father is a father who provides discipline and guidance, as well as nurturing. But like when she said, the best possible mother cannot be a father, the mother offers nurturing, takes care of you, makes sure you're fed. Your father makes sure that you have the right moral guidance, that you make good decisions, that you know and perform your duties. And it's not so... Homo sapiens has very low sexual divergence compared to most mammals. Like, most mammals, they look completely different. Like, a male lion and a female lion look very, very different. Whereas men and women, while they, to us being humans, we can tell them apart at a glance. Overall, we are one of the less sexually dimorphous species. And the reason for that is because we often need to I wonder if there's a trend of the more social a species is, the lower its sexual dimorphism. You know what? I'm going to ask Claude. Let's just ask him. Let's see. Will I be signed into my Claude? Hold on. No, that's the wrong thing.
Psychologically, humans are much more sexually dimorphous than other animals.
I think that's definitely wrong.
Except when in heat.
What do you mean create my account? God damn it. This freaking thing. Okay, hold on. I gotta go to my other browser. Oh, I closed my other browser. Here. Here we go. Claude. Okay.
At other times, they are basically the same.
Okay. Is there a general trend?
Think of a male and female cat. Male and female dog.
Maybe? I mean, yeah, I haven't had that many dogs. I only really ever had, I think, 3. So, I wouldn't really know, but yeah, I think it is well understood among dog breeders that there is a difference in personality between male and female dogs. I didn't notice a huge difference.
They are different, but not as much as humans.
Here, let me ask Claude. Okay, is there a general trend that the more social a species is, the less sexually dimorphous they are? No, it's telling me I misspelled dimorphous, but it's actually that it doesn't know the word dimorphous. And yeah, I know you can't see this, but I can't show it to you right now. So I'll just have to read it. He's thinking about it. Oh, I left him on max thinking. Uh-oh. Okay, we'll let him cook for a minute while we
Ants and bees are the most social animals. Insects.
Yeah.
LL.
He said ants and bees are the most social ants, and it corrected it to animals or insects, and then he...
They are the most dimorphous.
That's true. That is true. Interesting. Claude's still thinking. What was the other point I wanted to make? Oh, well, at least in terms of, like... I don't know. Because... Yeah, I have heard from people who would know that the scientific consensus is that Homo sapiens is unusually low in sexual dimorphism.
Claude is thinking about how to make your bullshit make sense.
Okay, he came back. Not as a clean rule, no. The intuition is reasonable, but the variable that actually predicts sexual dimorphism across taxa isn't sociality per se, it's the mating system, specifically the variance in male reproductive success, the degree of polygyny. It's the mating system, specifically the variance in male reproductive success. Sociality only relates to dimorphism through its effect on that, and depending on the lineage, it pushes the relationship in either direction. The cleanest counterexamples run opposite to the hypothesis because group living often enables the monopolization that drives extreme dimorphism. Elephant seals are among the most dimorphic animals alive, males roughly 3 times female mass, precisely because they aggregate into dense breeding colonies where a handful of beachmasters can monopolize dozens of females. Polygynous herding ungulates show the same pattern. Across ungulates, dimorphism scales up with harem breeding group size. Clutton Brock's classic comparative work. So red deer, bison, and mini antelope are both highly gregarious and strongly dimorphic, while the monomorphic ungulates tend to be the solitary or pair-living monogamous ones, like dik-diks and dweekers species. What does that mean? What is a lekking? Sage grouse, ruffs, birds of paradise, where the lek itself is a social aggregation. In all these cases, more aggregated goes with more dimorphic. Where the hypothesis has a real kernel of truth is in a specific shift that happens as groups become large and multi-male. When one male can't monopolize a group, pre-copulatory contest competition, which builds body size and weapon dimorphism, gets relaxed, and selection moves to post-copulatory sperm competition, which builds testy size and sperm traits rather than body dimorphism. Interesting. The textbook contrast is gorillas versus chimps. Gorillas live in single male harems, have 2x body dimorphism and tiny testes. Chimps live in large, promiscuous multi-male, multi-female groups, have far more modest body dimorphism and enormous testes. So a certain kind of sociality, large multi-male groups, can indeed flatten morphological body dimorphism, but it does so by trading it for a different dimorphism you don't see externally. Humans fit loosely into the same low contest end of the spectrum, modest size dimorphism, reduced canines, which is probably part of where the intuition originates. The genuine social and low dimorphism association comes from social monogamy and cooperative breeding. Gibbons, many cooperatively breeding birds, but that's monogamy suppressing sexual selection, not more sociality. A monogamous pair bonder isn't more social than a polygynous herd animal, it just has a mating system that equalizes reproductive variance between the sexes. And the limiting case breaks the framework entirely. Eusocial insects, this was your point, are the most social animals there are, yet drones, queens, and sterile female workers are wildly different morphologically. That's caste differentiation rather than the sexual selection axis dimorphism usually refers to, which is a good reminder that sociality is several different things: group size, group composition, cooperation, and mating system, and only the mating system component reliably tracks dimorphism. So if you want the one-line version, dimorphism tracks the intensity and form of sexual selection, and sociality is at best an indirect, lineage-dependent proxy for that, frequently a positive one rather than the negative one the question supposes.
Can you paste it to Discord?
Yep. Let me actually get into my Discord. Discord. Boop. Your message is too long. Bye, Discord Nitro. Oh. It's too long by a very interesting number. That's funny. Okay, I gotta cut this up. Yes, I'm sure this is incredibly interesting to watch.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then... Oh, that's also too long. Yeah. It would have been faster to just paste the link to the chat, actually.
Claude thinks it's very intelligent.
Riveting gameplay, indeed.
Sorry about that, but I hope you all found the discussion interesting.
Claude constantly puts you in your place.
Well, I want him to give me some, some pushback, and he gave it to me. Where were we going with all that? I don't even remember. All right, I want to watch this video. I'm all thinked out. Let's watch this video about war.
Is Private First Class Eugene Nielsen, who urgently tells the Filipino to take down a message. I think I am the only one alive from the Palawan prison. I want you to write to the War Department to tell them about the Japanese massacre of Americans at Puerto Princesa. Nielsen is one of only 11 survivors of the massacre, and survived by swimming over 9 hours across Puerto Princesa.
9 hours? Holy
The
shit.
survivors will be rescued by an American scout aircraft. And
How do you
Nielsen will
swim
tell
for
the story
9
to
hours?
US Army intelligence on the 7th of January 1945. It
I guess he
will set
took
in
a lot of
motion
breaks.
A sequence of events that will end in what is known today as the Great Raid, a risky mission behind enemy lines by American and Filipino troops to save POWs from a similar fate. Thanks to this week's sponsor, FreeCash. Do you like playing games? With FreeCash, you could be earning money for trying new games, completing surveys, testing apps, or trying new offers. It's a rewards platform where you earn real cash by doing simple things. 2 days later, the Allies land on the largest island in the
It's kind of
Philippines,
disturbing that he's
Luzon.
advertising that kind of crap.
General Douglas MacArthur's combined American, Australian, and Mexican forces have already secured the islands of Leyte and Mindoro, but Luzon is the most populous island in the archipelago and hosts the capital of Manila.
What the hell am I doing? There we go.
The island also has special significance
Was not worth
for
the Delta
MacArthur.
V, but we got it.
In 1942, he commanded the heroic but ultimately doomed defense of the Philippines. Only a personal command from President Roosevelt forced MacArthur to flee the Philippines before the Japanese army overran the last Allied forces, leading the general to declare, "I will return," after his evacuation to Australia. He has now fulfilled that promise as his armies advance from Lingayen Bay towards Manila. By the 26th of January, the US 6th Army under the command of General Walter Kruger has made it halfway to the capital when Kruger is briefed on a potential problem by his chief intelligence officer, Colonel Horton White. White explains that over 70,000 American and Filipino troops were captured by the Japanese following their surrender in April of 1942. The ensuing Bataan Death March and almost 3 years of slave labour has left few of the original men alive and now in continued grave danger. Colonel White's contact within the Filipino resistance movement, Major Robert Lapham, informed
Is it
him
more
of a
disturbing
POW
than
camp
some
60
VPN
miles
or
north
ground
of Manila,
news?
near the
I think
city
so,
of
because
Cabanatuan.
that's like a gambling
The camp
platform.
at
They're,
Cabanatuan was once the largest in the Philippines,
VPNs just
housing
want
over
to spy
8,000
on you and sell your
Americans at one
data.
point.
That stuff
Lapham
actually
explains
tries to
White
get you
that only
addicted to
500 mostly feeble
not
prisoners
necessarily
are left in the
gambling,
camp,
but
and there is a
it's-
good
it's
chance
a lot
the
more
Japanese guards will
exploitative.
massacre them before they can be liberated.
directly exploitative, I should say.
Lapham and the Filipino guerrillas consider many plans to free the POWs. But the
Like, I
guerrillas will be
might,
hopelessly
if
outnumbered
this
and
channel
outflanked
ever takes
by
off,
over
I might
8,000
do
Japanese
VPN
soldiers
ads.
from the 40th
I would never
Army.
do an ad like that.
Paradoxically, the closer the Allies get to the camp, the more danger the prisoners are in. The massacre of the POWs
I
on
hate
Palawan
these stupid
seems
mass
to
drivers. I
confirm
want a
that
laser.
the enemy will not allow Allied prisoners to be liberated. White's
damn it.
briefing convinces General Kruger to launch a rescue mission in advance of 6th Army's arrival on the 31st of January to prevent a massacre. With a clear deadline, White and Kruger decide their only option is a deep penetration raid behind enemy lines to extract and escort the POWs back to friendly territory. The plan is classified top secret, and Kruger and White send for the only man who can put together this mission on such short notice, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Mucci. Mucci is the commander of the 900-man-strong 6th Ranger Battalion, which has yet to see true combat in the war. A colourful character, Mucci is a survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor and has been agitating 6th Army headquarters for his men to get into combat. Lieutenant Mucci's task will be extremely difficult. He and his subordinates only have 1 day to plan a deep penetration raid.
I thought it
around
was about
30
getting
miles
paid to
behind the
test
Japanese
stuff.
front line.
Maybe
They
I'm
need to
wrong.
traverse difficult terrain without
I didn't
motorized
actually
transport
watch the ad.
and
I just
without being
kind of
detected by the enemy.
pattern matched it to
Then,
other
the
things I've
rescuers
seen.
must storm the camp and retrieve the prisoners before expelling
gonna hit
back
that.
towards American lines with the enemy in hot pursuit. The Rangers will have the support from Major Lapham's guerrillas, but Filipino resistance groups, which detest both the Japanese and the Americans for their pre-war imperial possession of the Philippines, are also operating in the area. Unable to take all 800 of the Rangers, Lieutenant Colonel Mucci assigns the mission to the 90 men of C Company under the command of Captain Robert Prince, along with 30 men of 2nd Platoon F Company. At 5 AM on the 28th of January, a company of jeeps and trucks pick up Mucci and the Rangers at their encampment just south of Lingayen Gulf. The vehicles carry the Rangers around 40 miles south to the town of Kimber, right at the front line. The Rangers disembark at 7:30 AM and prepare their equipment for the 12-hour march ahead. To reconnoitre the path ahead, two 5-man groups, led by Lieutenants
See, now I'm
Paul
so
Nellist
fucked up
and
I
Tom
can't even
Winterberg,
track the
are sent
asteroids.
to observe the camp and meet with the assault group at its staging area.
I'm gonna use my engine.
The two men are part of the elite US 6th Army Special Reconnaissance Unit, better known as the Alamo Scouts.
Ah, yeah, my ship
At
is
2
just
PM,
fucked.
Mucci gives the order to advance, and C Company steps off, heading eastward in a single file line, with two Filipinos leading the way. The march south towards Cabanatuan is grueling. Despite raiding deep behind enemy lines, Mucci is just as concerned that his men will be seen and attacked by friendly forces by accident. The Rangers trudge through soggy rice paddies and dense jungle, rather than staying on the exposed trails. The rough terrain is hell on the Rangers, who struggle through bogs and up steep slopes weighed down by their gear, but it does have advantages. The jungle canopy keeps the men hidden, and enemy vehicles will not be able to follow the party if they are detected. At the remote village of Lobong, the Rangers rendezvous with 80 Filipino guerrillas, led by Captain Eduardo Hosso, who will guide them through the next few miles. Then, they will meet an even larger group of guerrilla fighters before assaulting the camp. The Rangers stop to rest in Lobong for a few hours before resuming the march at midnight, with Captain Hosson's guerrillas accompanying them. Meanwhile, the gaunt and malnourished prisoners at the Cabanatuan prison camp are increasingly fatalistic about their chances of surviving the war. The camp held 6,000 inmates only a few months earlier, but most of the able-bodied prisoners have been shipped off to slave labour camps elsewhere in the Japanese Empire, leaving a little over 500 men at Cabanatuan. However, the next morning, the camp commandant summons the American commanding officer, Colonel James Duckworth. To his amazement, the camp commandant tells him that the Japanese guards will be leaving Cabanatuan in 2 days, and the camp will be left to the POWs. Yet, he warns the prisoners not to escape, or else the Japanese will return and massacre them all. True to the commandant's promise, the Japanese guards are gone by the 12th of January.
Damn
The
it.
prisoners ransack the food warehouse and the Japanese side of the camp to find ample food stores. For the next 2 weeks, the Allied POWs have full reign of the camp, and morale improves dramatically as the prisoners
Yeah, I
regain
imagine.
much of their strength. News comes from the radio that General Kruger's US 6th Army
Can I find
is
that other
advancing
one?
towards Cabanatuan,
No.
but
Damn it.
Colonel Duckworth strictly forbids any conversations of escape. The road next to the camp is one of the main Japanese supply lines to the north, meaning enemy vehicles and columns of troops are constantly passing by at all hours of the day. Duckworth urges his men to be patient and wait for liberation. The POW's brief freedom lasts until mid-January, when more than 300 Japanese soldiers enter the camp with 2 tanks. The guard towers and pillboxes are remanned, and Cabanatuan once again becomes a prison camp. This time, a massacre appears imminent. Filipino farmers who frequent the camp to deliver food pass on information that the Japanese guards are only days away from machine gunning the remaining POWs into mass graves.
Mass
During a meeting with the new camp
Wow.
leadership, American Dr. Hibbs sneaks the
tone
glances
is,
and papers
doesn't
and
match
sees
what
an
he's saying.
execution order for the prisoners, along with a diagram of where the act will take place. Robert Bodie decides it's now or never to escape. We were positive they were going to kill us. I figured I've made it this far. I'm not going to get killed like that. After aborting an attempt on the 29th of January due to increased foot traffic on the road, Bodie and 2 men decide to escape the following night. To the north, Lieutenant Colonel Mucci and the 200 men now under his command are approaching the village of Platero, which is 2 miles from the prison camp. Here, Mucci tells Captain Prince the raid will begin later that evening. However, Lieutenants Nellist and Runeseville report to Mucci that they estimate over 7,000 Japanese soldiers around Cabanatuan City. Even more concerning is a battalion of Japanese troops less than a mile from the compound who will have to be dealt with. Mucci is introduced to Captain Juan Pajota, the commander of 90 armed Filipino guerrillas and the foremost expert on the Japanese disposition around the camp. Upon being told that the attack will begin at dusk, Captain Pajota replies quietly, "Sir, with all due respect, that is suicide." He explains that Filipino spies have discovered there are over 2,000 Japanese troops within a mile of the prison camp, with more coming overnight. He urges Mucci to postpone 24 hours until these units have left the area. This would also give him more time to gather guerrilla fighters and buffalo cards, which will be key to moving disabled Allied POWs. Mucci decides to postpone the attack. On the morning of the 30th of January, Lieutenant Nellist and Private Rufo Vaquilar disguise themselves as local farmers and occupy an abandoned shack around 300 yards north of the camp. The two men compile a detailed report, which includes a map showing Japanese positions, telephone wires, the prison camp's main features, and the best routes into the area. The sun rises on the 30th of January, with the Rangers and Filipino guerrilla fighters making their final preparations for the raid. Mucci will deploy Pajota and his 200 guerrillas around a mile and a half to the east of the prison camp to block the bridge over the Kabu River. There are approximately 1,200 Japanese soldiers and 4 tanks on the eastern shore of the river, and Pajota's objective is to prevent the enemy from reinforcing the camp's defenders. The 75 men under Captain Hosson's command, along with a Ranger bazooka team, will be deployed the same distance to the west to block the road to Cabanatuan City. Mucci is pessimistic that the guerrillas will be able to hold off the Japanese force, but Captain Pajota reassures him, "We will hold, sir. If the enemy passes, it will be over our dead bodies." This leaves the 90 men of C Company and the 30 men of 2nd Platoon F Company to liberate the prisoners. As the official commander for the prison break, Prince decides to split his force for the assault. 2nd Platoon, led by Lieutenant John Murphy, will take position to the east and south of the camp, while C Company will approach the main gate from the north. When the raid begins, 2nd Platoon and C Company will open fire on the Japanese garrison on the east side of the camp, hopefully catching the confused enemy in deadly crossfire. When the defenders have been suppressed or eliminated, C Company will charge through the front gates, while 2nd Platoon will enter the camp from the east. Captain Price estimates that all prisoners will be rescued in 30 minutes if all goes according to plan. He later describes the operation as organised confusion. "We wanted all hell to break loose, but to break loose precisely on our terms." A quick word on our brand new podcast, The War Office. We will take you through deep dives into the most famous battles, conflicts, and people throughout military history.
Deep
from the Second World
dives
War to the
into
present
the
day.
most famous?
Each episode blends engaging storytelling, immersive background audio production, and expert knowledge
sounds
from
pretty
leading
badass,
guest
actually.
historians, including James
God
Holland,
damn it.
John McManus, and Henry Sledge,
Hit the damn
son of
rock.
Eugene Sledge, and many more. We bring you authoritative insight and frontline detail like you've never heard before. Episodes release every Tuesday, wherever you listen to your podcast. The first episodes, The Hunt for Osama bin Laden, Operation Linebacker 1, and the First Battle of El Alamein, are available now. Links to the podcast are in the description. Follow the War Office podcast on your preferred podcast platform now. The biggest problem will be C Company's approach from the north over mostly flat, waterlogged rice paddies. The Rangers will have to crawl 3/4 of a mile over this exposed ground without being
I'm
seen.
almost out of ammo.
Captain Pajota offers an idea. His spies and guerrillas have noticed that Allied aircraft flying over the camp cause panic
Never
and
gonna get
commotion
that.
amongst the Japanese guards. Pajota suggests a flyover, telling Mucci, "No shooting, no bombs, just a flyover." Mucci loves the idea and sends a quick radio signal to 6th Army headquarters, asking for a flyover of the camp at 6:30 p.m. that evening. By
I can't
4:45
afford to keep.
p.m.,
Oh, I
the
have
plan
one
is set,
shot.
And
Okay.
at 5 p.m., the Rangers
Nah,
and their
missy
Filipino
chance to blow.
allies move out towards their objectives. The combined force of around 370 men crosses the Pampanga River just to the north of the camp at a shallow ford. The guerrillas then split up. Captain Hosson's force, along with the bazooka team, moves west towards Cabanatuan City, while Captain Pahota's team disappear into the jungle headed east
That's all I
towards
got.
the Kabu River Bridge. After half a mile marching through the tall grass fields, the Rangers reach the rice paddies to the north of their target. The prison camp is now in sight, and the Americans crouch down for concealment. Mucci strictly forbade the use of metal helmets to avoid light glinting off of them, and all dog tags have been taped together to keep them from jingling. Captain Price gives the signal, and the Rangers slowly advance into the rice paddies. Second platoon of F Company splits off to head around the eastern perimeter of the complex, led by Lieutenant Murphy. Prince has given Murphy the task of initiating the raid once his men are in position. Because none of the Rangers are carrying radios, second platoon opening fire will signal the beginning of the assault. By 5:45 PM, C Company is 3/4 of a mile from the camp, but Captain Price is nervous. He signals to his men to go to ground, and the Rangers begin snaking their way through the rice paddies. Some men are forced to crawl over fire ant nests and endure armies of red ants biting their skin while they silently creep forward. Suddenly, an alarm bell begins chiming from inside the camp. The Rangers instinctively shove
that's all we're
clips
gonna
into their
get today.
rifles and train their sights on enemy targets, but Lieutenant Colonel Mucci and Captain Prince do not give the order to open fire. The bell tolls on and on, but there is no observable commotion inside the camp fence. Just as the chime finally ends, a loud explosion is heard. One of the platoon leaders panics and jumps up while motioning for the rest of the Rangers to charge, but he is quickly ordered to lay back down. Another excruciating wait begins, but the Japanese seem unaware of their presence. It will later be revealed the alarm was simply a US Navy watch bell rung by prisoners every half hour, and the so-called explosion was just a Japanese truck backfiring. Nerves are understandably high. Meanwhile, Captain Juan Pajota's Filipino guerrillas are finishing up their deployment at 6:30 PM. His force of 200 men have taken position on the western bank of the Kabu River in a V shape.
How many nuclear reactors am I going to
They
consume?
have laid 25 anti-tank mines on both sides of the road, along with 4 30 caliber machine guns, less than 500 yards from the large Japanese encampment on the other bank of the river. The Filipinos are so close they can hear the enemy troops engaging in casual conversation as they cook their evening meals. No guards were stationed on the bridge, allowing an explosives expert to strap a timed explosive to the underside of the timber span. The bomb is set to explode at 7:45 PM, hopefully right when the Japanese attempts to rush their mechanized battalion over the river to reinforce the camp guards. Captain Eduardo Hosson's men are also in place 1 mile to the west of Pajota's position, ready to intercept any enemy forces coming from Cabanatuan City. Pajota's scouts sever the telephone lines leading into the prison compound, meaning the camp is completely cut off from outside communication. All that remains now is for the raid to begin. Lieutenant John Murphy's men are cautiously making their way past the guard tower on the northeast corner of the camp in a single file line, when a Japanese sentry suddenly shouts out a warning and raises his rifle. The Rangers freeze while more sentries come to investigate. They may have just blown the surprise. The guards are only 40 yards away and engaged in intense discussion, but their attention turns to the sky. A dull droning is heard coming from the northwest as a strange and futuristic-looking aircraft slowly comes into view at 7:20 PM. This is a rare P-61 Black Widow night fighter, the first American fighter designed specifically to be equipped with radar. The Black Widow is nicknamed Hard to Get, and her pilot, Kenneth Schreiber, banks low over the camp. He roars over the guard towers and sends the Japanese sentries into a frenzy. The soldiers are completely transfixed by the P-61, just as Captain Pajota predicted. Captain Schreiber performs a series of acrobatics, purposefully making it seem like the Black Widow is about to crash before pulling up at the last second. While the Japanese excitedly point at the alien-looking aircraft, the Rangers creep forward into position.
That's a hell of a distraction.
Lieutenant Murphy's platoon escapes further detection and takes position on the eastern side of the camp after unknowingly crawling over the graves of executed
Black Widow,
Allied POWs.
the most overpowered plane in Heroes of the
Schreiber
Pacific.
continues his elaborate ruse for 20 minutes before finally banking
I mean,
away.
if it was the
and
first
heading
plane to have
northwest
radar, I
towards
imagine
the
that would be
Lingayen
overpowered.
Gulf. Lieutenant Murphy glances at his watch after the Black Widow departs and is dismayed that the time is 7:45 p.m, 15 minutes after the raid was supposed to begin. Knowing that every ranger is counting on him, he takes a deep breath and aims on a Japanese sentry inside the perimeter with his M1 Garand rifle. He pulls the trigger and the soldier falls to the ground. The air is immediately filled with the cracks of M1 Garands and M1 carbines, combined with pattering of Thompson submachine guns and Browning automatic rifles. Inside the camp, Dr. Hibbs throws himself into an irrigation ditch, describing the cauldron of noise as whistling slugs, Roman candles, and flaming meteors sailing over our heads. Captain Prince fires off a red
Looks like
flare
there's a ship
to signal
nearby.
to the other groups
Hail them
that
and
the
have
Great
your crew
Raid
talk
has
to them.
begun.
See if there's anything interesting they have to say.
The Japanese soldiers inside the camp
I don't think there
stand
is.
no chance against the Rangers' firepower. The
Oh, you
Japanese
can't
sentry
see
in
my
the northeast
LiDAR.
tower,
Yeah, there's
who
nothing
had
on it.
supposedly spotted 2nd Platoon, tumbles out of his perch, while the barracks and office
Oh, yeah, I
quarters
see
are
him in the
raked with
feed.
gunfire.
He's over that way.
Within
Yeah, he's too
15
far away to
seconds,
talk to.
all of the guard towers and pillboxes have been knocked out. One ranger will later say,
It's on the Viz
"We
feed
mowed
though.
them down
Yeah, I
like
saw
hay."
his drive,
Staff Sergeant
but he's
Teddy
not
Richardson
close
of
enough.
C Company
I think
leaps
they
to
have
his
to
feet
be in
and bounds
LiDAR
across the
range
road
for you to
the
talk
front
to him.
gate, where he attempts to bash the padlock open with the butt of
You
his
can
Thompson
always hail them
submachine
in the
gun.
pilot tan. Tab?
After trialing but failing,
Oh,
Richardson
you can.
pulls out his Colt 45 pistol to shoot the lock off, but is confronted by a
This is Ringer's Kraken. You seem lost. Need help? Roger? Priscilla! Wait, you gonna say something?
And he's definitely on LiDAR too.
No, he's not. I can't see on my LiDAR now because I have the tab open. Why is he not saying anything? This game got a lot buggier, like I can show you now. No, that's not right. Oh, there we go. Yeah, he's not on LiDAR. But yeah, I was wrong. You can, in fact, talk to me. Do you have contact with Dean? Dean Garcia? He left a few months back. Do you know of any trade opportunities out here? We picked up something big at the edge of our LiDAR range deeper in. Something large. Okay, we can warp to that. I think we can get away with it.
Guess he's not close enough for your astrogator to identify the ship. No idea if you have one though.
I do not have one. So that might have something to do with it.
Japanese sentry just 30
This is a
feet
brand new
away.
run. I just started it yesterday, so
The
this is like
sentry
4
fires
hours
first,
into the
and
game.
the slug glances off Richardson's pistol, sending it spiraling into the ground. Richardson kills the sentry with his Thompson before retrieving his pistol. He fires a single shot, which shatters the padlock, before he throws the camp's main gate open.
Something down there.
With the main gate open, the first group of C Company
He's
Rangers
only got a
stand up
geologist,
and rush into the
unpaid too.
compound. Richardson and Private Leyland Provencher are the first men into the camp, where they follow a fleeing Japanese soldier back to the officers' quarters. The two men shred the quarters with Richardson's Thompson and Provencher's BAR, chewing the wooden walls to pieces. Provencher
shreds, you
flings
say?
open the door to a utility shed to find a man cowering inside. "Don't shoot, please, I'm American," the man shouts. Provencher orders him to come out slowly, and the shaken prisoner leaves the shed holding a copy of Life magazine
is this?
with a smoking bullet hole through it. Satisfied he is indeed American, Provencher shouts, "Get to the front gate," and moves on to look for more
Whomst for you?
prisoners. A bazooka team, led by Staff Sergeant
talk
Manton
to the
Stewart,
moonlight. Oh,
follows the riflemen down the main road and into the camp.
Oh, no.
Stuart's team closes
Am I
to
not
within
able to
50
talk to this
yards
guy?
of the
Oh, is that
Japanese
a... Oh,
tank
no.
shed,
Oh, it's a
while the
fucking
Rangers
pirate.
spread out and maintain a constant wall of fire towards suspected enemy positions. A Ranger loads a rocket into Stuart's bazooka, and the staff sergeant raises the
Yeah,
launcher
eat
towards
tungsten,
the
you
shed.
commie fuck.
He
Yeah!
spots two Japanese long bed trucks loaded with dozens of
Oh,
soldiers
you gonna try and run
pulling out
away?
from behind the
You gonna
building.
try and run away? I don't
Stuart
think so.
takes aim at the first truck and fires. The rocket pierces the engine block and explodes the vehicle,
Brilliant.
while Rangers focus their
Hang on.
gunfire on the second
This
truck,
beryllium is worth more than
leaving
your
no
life. Hold on.
survivors. Stuart turns his attention back to the tank shed and fires 3 rockets, detonating the 2 tanks within. With the threat of the tanks dealt with, the rest of C Company rushes into the camp and makes for the American side of the compound. Sergeant Lester Malone rushes up to the gate separating the prison section from the rest of the camp and shoots the lock off with his M1 Garand. He opens up the gate and shouts, "We're Yanks. This is a prison break. Head for the main gate." However, many of the prisoners initially panic during the chaos. Some, such as Captain Burt Bank,
Let's go and
believe
find that
it's
guy
a
and finish him
Japanese
off.
trick to lure the Americans out where they can be killed. He later recalled, "We whispered to each other not to move, that it was a trap to get us to run, and then the Japanese would open up on us." When a ranger finds Bank and his friends hiding in a ditch, he shouts at them to run for the gate. Bank asks the ranger where he's from, to which the soldier replies, "Oklahoma."
Ah, no, he's long gone.
"Oklahoma, that's good enough for me." Private Robert Bodie
Unless I can
is
see him
also
on the LiDAR.
suspicious when a ranger approaches him and orders Bodie to get to the front
I
gate.
think so.
He later remembered, "I said, who the hell do you think you are? Never mind, we're US Army Rangers, get out of here." I said, "What's a ranger?" He said, "Never mind, get out of here. We've come to get you out of here. Don't ask any more questions. Get out, get out." The Rangers
a
are
ranger?
surprised at the POW's
We're rescuing
seemingly
you,
ungrateful
stupid motherfucker.
behavior, and quickly become annoyed at their reluctance to follow instructions. The American camp commander, Colonel Duckworth, is especially belligerent, shouting,
Duckworth.
"You can't do this. You're going to get us killed. The Japanese told us no escapes. No one leaves here until I say they do." Finally,
Well,
a
you're
ranger
being
grabs him by the
rescued,
arm
dude.
and says, "With all due respect, you are not in charge here. General MacArthur is. Now I suggest you head back to the main gate before we kick your ass there. I'll apologize in the morning." A grumbling Duckworth does as he's told. At the Cabby River Bridge, Captain Pahota's men had played the same waiting game as the rest of the assault force. At 7:45 p.m, the crackle of gunfire is heard coming from the prison camp. There is a brief lull which lasts a few seconds as the Japanese freeze and look in the direction of Cabanatuan. Then, Pahota's guerrillas let loose with intense machine gun and rifle fire. Like the guards at the camp, the Japanese troops on the east bank are completely paralyzed and mown down where they stand. They attempt to muster men to charge across the bridge before the timber structure explodes, sending wooden
Don't
shards
hit
everywhere.
the goddamn thing.
The time bomb has exploded right on time, but Pahota's men are alarmed to find that the span hasn't collapsed. A hole in the road will prevent the tanks from crossing, but Japanese infantry can go around the gap. Pahota's 200 men will have to hold their position against a force 5 times their size. The enemy doesn't wait long to try and storm across the damaged bridge. Within minutes, 50 Japanese soldiers gather on the eastern bank. According to the official Ranger report of the operation, they begin chanting weird incantations. The Filipino guerrillas wait until the Japanese commanding officer shouts "Banzai" before opening fire on the charging enemy. The Japanese run directly into the trap. Pahota's V formation provides murderous enfilading fire, as the attackers barely make it 10 yards. The vicious barrage cuts down all 50 Japanese soldiers within 30 seconds. Their commander, Captain Tomeo Oyabu, responds by launching another Banzai charge in exactly the same manner. Once again, a group of around 50 men throw themselves at the Filipinos.
The last time
Once
I found
again,
one of these, it had a
every
hole
single
in the
man
side.
is
but
mown down.
this one doesn't seem to have that.
Captain Pahota remarks to one of his lieutenants, "They will keep coming. They know
this just
no
nothing?
other way."
Just a big rock?
Captain Hosson's
like it.
roadblock facing Cabanatuan City had been
Should I
bracing
try
for a
to break
firefight
it up?
with enemy forces,
I don't
but
think
no
I can.
Japanese men or trucks come down the road. In fact, the enemy has already been found and destroyed.
Yeah,
A
that doesn't
loitering
do anything.
P-61 Black Widow has been monitoring the Rizal Road northeast of the camp while the raid is ongoing. The pilot spots a long column of Japanese vehicles from the 2nd Shusai
I'd
Battalion
circle it just in
heading
case.
south from San Jose,
But they don't always
towards
have
the prison
something.
camp.
They're also indestructible, by the way.
The Black Widow
Ah,
makes
alright.
3 gun runs on the convoy, destroying 12 trucks and a tank. The Japanese battalion is stopped in its tracks and will never make it to the prison camp, ensuring that Captain Hosson's guerrillas are able to slip away into the night without contacting the enemy. Meanwhile, the evacuation of the prison compound is still ongoing. The Rangers are surprised to find not just Americans in the camp, but Norwegian, Canadian, Dutch, and British POWs. A Ranger shouts, "You're free! All Americans assemble at the main gate." A British prisoner yells back, "I'm not American, but shall I come too?" His response draws laughter from the Rangers. The reality of liberation is beginning to set in for most of the POWs. Lieutenant Edward Thomas stumbles towards the main gate, carrying a sick friend on his back, when he encounters his first Ranger. "Are you a Yank?" Thomas asks, and the Ranger replies in the affirmative. He tries to struggle on towards the main gate, but the Ranger stops him. "Here, let us carry your buddy." He slings Thomas's friend on his back. An emotional Thomas later said, "I was glad it was dark, so he couldn't see my tears." The prisoners hobble out of the camp's main gate. 6th Battalion Surgeon, Captain James Fisher and his team of medics quickly inspect them to see who can walk and who will need to be put in a buffalo cart for the long journey home. An unseen Japanese soldier slips away from the rear barracks and into a shallow trench. Armed with a knee mortar, he quickly fires off 3 rounds, which arc through the air and explode around the main gate. Rangers from 2nd Platoon spot the muzzle flame and spray the trench with automatic fire, killing the soldier and silencing the mortar. However, 6 men have been wounded, including Dr. Fisher, who is bleeding from a severe shrapnel wound in his stomach. Back at the Kabu River Bridge, Captain Pahota's prediction that the Japanese would keep coming proves correct. Not the most imaginative officer, Captain Oyabu has
somebody.
ordered 2 more Banzai charges, both of which fail with all
Oh,
men
is that my
lost.
fucking pirate? Alright, well,
A
I'm gonna-
truck carrying
deal
several
with
dozen
him.
men
What does this
moves
do?
towards
Oh.
the crossing, but is quickly hit
I
by a
don't
bazooka
necessarily
round
know.
fired by a Filipino guerrilla fighter.
I'll go check him
The
out,
truck
sure.
explodes, sending Japanese soldiers flying into the air. The survivors of the explosion feebly attempt to rush the Filipino position, only to be cut down yet again. The bodies of the fallen have piled up on the bridge to the point where further waves have to climb over their dead comrades. The bazooka man takes aim at 4 Japanese tanks hidden behind mango trees on the opposite side of the river. Even though he was first trained on the weapon earlier that morning, the Filipino guerrilla methodically destroys all 4 tanks. Their burning hulks further illuminate the area, showing more groups of Japanese soldiers gathering for one-way attacks. The Banzai charges continue for another half an hour, much to the astonishment of the Filipinos. Some of the guerrillas will later recall their disgust at the utter waste of lives in these doomed assaults. The Japanese do attempt one flanking attack a few hundred yards to the north of the bridge, but the assault group is detected and wiped out within minutes. Despite the gruesome scene, one of Captain Pahota's
He's not
lieutenants
firing his
recalls
engine.
seeing a smile on his face
This
throughout
guy.
the battle. 500,000 men, women and children have been killed during the brutal Japanese occupation of the Philippines, including up to 164,000 Filipinos murdered outright in war crime events. The Filipino resistance movement has been successful in disrupting Japanese logistics since 1942,
Is this guy dead in
but have
space?
avoided open battle with the occupiers until now. The guerrillas
I don't
have
have an
proved
arm.
they are more
I
than
can't
equal
take
to
'em.
the enemy, as the attacks begin to die down.
Can I send my employee?
Most of the
I
prisoners
spy
of war
with
have
my
been
little eyes
evacuated from
something
the camp
beginning with
by
D.
8:05 p.m. and head north across the rice paddies towards the Pampanga River crossing.
Are you volunteering, Priscilla? I don't want to tell her it's too dangerous to board. Go get it. I have a bad feeling about this. Even damage, it's worth a lot. Let's do this. Okay, go die, Priscilla. Get to it. Oop, okay, don't crash into it. Don't stop. 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 Why is it not, well, it's more damage now. Uh-oh. Closing in on Trader's Faith. I see a puncture, clean entry, no fractures. That is not right. That is not right. Micrometeorites should have scattered on the whip coat. Airlock light is on, so there's still power. Airlock cycles, but it reads hard vacuum inside. Warnings confirm a full depressure event. Ship still has juice. Emergency lights are on. Systems idling. HAL deployment alert is flashing across every panel. Check the ship logs. I want to know what we're getting into. Pulling logs now. Ship was running standard excavation ops. Nothing unusual. Then, out of nowhere, the depressure alarm triggered. Nothing even logged on the proximity log. Whatever that was, it was going at orbital speeds. A retrograde freak accident? Get to the cockpit. If it's only atmosphere, you can just take it back in your suit. Yeah, sure, just take it back in my suit. A week eating paste and pissing in a bag, living the dream. Well, Priscilla, maybe you'll get paid. We're 21 grand in debt. How about that? Oh, without her, I can't. Now I don't have my geologist. Cockpit's a mess. Hal ripped everything loose on its way out. Seats off its rails, lockers burst open, panels hanging. Powering up now. Reactors holding steady. Systems are cycling. Looks like we got a ship. Running final checks, but we should be heading back under our own power. Hell yeah! Okay, that's a really big win. Even if it does mean I don't have my geologist anymore. She'll come back after we get back to the station. She's not permanently gone, she's just gone for the rest of this dive. Right, I was waiting for her to analyze that rock, but she's not here. It's just iron. Alright, well, that's a pretty big one. We'll see how much that's worth at the end of the
Those men who are
dive.
too weak to make the trek back towards American lines are loaded onto buffalo carts provided by Filipino villages and requisitioned by the resistance. The Rangers inform Captain Prince that no more POWs are left. Prince walks alone into the Allied side of the prison compound and begins shouting, "Is there anybody here? Anybody left?" After 10 minutes of checking each barrack, Prince confirms that every man has been rescued. At 8:15 p.m, Prince walks out of the front gates and heads for the Pampanga River. The prison break element of the raid lasted exactly 30 minutes, just as Prince had predicted. To the east of the compound, a group of Rangers from 2nd Platoon of F Company are making their way towards the river crossing when they are fired upon by a Japanese straggler. In the ensuing firefight,
That's
Corporal
brilliant,
Roy
man.
Sweezy is hit by friendly
Yeah, let's
fire
go get it.
and dies minutes later. Sweezy is the second American
I think
who
we already
dies during
lost
the
it.
raid
Damn it.
after a severely weakened POW suffers a fatal heart attack during the evacuation. At 8:40 p.m, Prince fires another red flare into the sky
Yeah, it's
to
gone.
signal the
Damn it.
guerrillas to withdraw towards the Pampanga River and the village of Platero. While Captain Hossone's guerrillas and the bazooka team easily fall back without any problems, Captain Pahota's men are still engaged by sporadic Japanese attacks. His guerrillas manage to slip away from their positions at 10 p.m, leaving a scene of destruction in their wake. At 11 p.m, 6th Army Headquarters receives a coded message from Lieutenant Colonel Mucci, which reads, "Baker Zulu George Baker leaving with some friends. The Ranger radio operator jubilantly announces to General Kruger they've done it. However, back in Platera, Mucci receives grave news about the condition of the wounded Dr. Fisher. Despite the best efforts of the Ranger medics and even the American camp doctors, Fisher is not improving and requires emergency surgery. After previously drifting in and out of consciousness, Fisher wakes up in the middle of his surgery and urgently asks, "Did we get them? The prisoners? Did we get them all?" A Ranger responds, "You bet we did, Captain. Every last one of them." A relieved Fisher lapses back into a coma with a smile on his face. He dies the next morning. The long trek back towards American lines lasts all of the 31st of January. The prisoners demonstrate surprising stamina given their ordeal over the last 3 years. Many Allied POWs will later testify that the 2 weeks of better food after their original guards fled the camp played a major role in their ability to walk through the jungle. The column comes to a stop ahead of a neighbourhood controlled by the Filipino Hukbalahap at 6:30 am on the 1st of February. The Hukbalahap are a Marxist resistance group that is hostile to both the Japanese and the Americans, forcing Lieutenant Colonel Mucci to negotiate safe passage through the village. When informed that only the Americans along with the POWs will be allowed to continue on, a furious Mucci informs his interpreter, "Tell them we're all coming through. If they have any objections, tell them I'll get on the radio and call in the American artillery. This village will be leveled." The Hukbalahap leader is suddenly more receptive to Mucci's request, and the combined force is allowed safe passage. At 9 am that morning, Mucci receives a radio message to proceed towards the town of Talavera, which has just been captured by the US 6th Army, and is 12 miles closer than their original destination. At 10:30 am, 4 silver specks are seen on the horizon, diving right at the caravan. After panicked shouts of "They're Japanese, take cover," the fighters pull up and waggle their wings to reveal the US Army Air Force roundel on 4 P-51 Mustangs. Soon, former POWs can see ambulances and American tanks gathering in the distance. At just before 11 am on the 1st of February 1945, the long column crosses back into Allied lines. Sergeant Abby Abraham later said, "We wept openly, and we wept without shame." The daring 1945 raid on the Cabanatuan prisoner of war camp is a complete success. The Rangers and Filipino guerrillas have liberated 522 prisoners, 492 of whom are Americans. 2 Rangers have been killed, with 7 wounded, while only 20 guerrillas are slightly wounded during the raid. 2 POWs die during the operation, their weakened bodies unable to stave off the prolonged effects of illness and malnourishment. The Japanese suffered far worse casualties. Just 255 of the 1,200 men from the 2nd Shusai Battalion survived the battle, with most of these wounded. Furthermore, none of the between 75 and 200 men defending the prison camp left the compound alive. Between 500 and 1,200 Japanese soldiers have been killed, making the raid not just a morale-boosting success for the Allies, but also a dramatic battlefield defeat for the Japanese army. The US 6th Army's intelligence summary of the raid concluded the mission was an almost perfect example of prior reconnaissance and planning. The Allied forces managed to improvise a rescue plan on incredibly short notice, integrate the Filipino guerrillas into the raid, and complete the mission with almost no casualties. The Rangers had rarely worked alongside the Alamo Scouts, but unity of command under the 6th Army's Special Intelligence subsection allowed Lieutenant Colonel Mucci to coordinate these different groups while in the field. The commanders on the ground also showed great initiative and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. By comparison, the Japanese response to the raid was hampered by a bloated command structure and the overall breakdown in the 14th Army's fighting abilities as the Allies continuously pushed them back. Despite the success, one prisoner has been left behind in the camp.
Well, actually.
A 65-year-old, deaf British civilian named Edwin Rose had fallen asleep in the latrines when the raid began, and somehow slept through the entire battle for the compound. As Lieutenant Thomas later explained, he was a pleasant enough fellow, but he was a slow thinker. After the raid, Rose woke up, left the latrines, found he was the only man alive in the camp, and promptly went back to bed in his prisoner hut. The following morning, Rose shaved and put on his best clothes before strolling out of the front gate. He is soon found by Filipino guerrilla fighters and escorted unharmed back to Allied lines.
Huh.
General
Actually made it.
MacArthur visits the recovering former prisoners and awards the Distinguished Service Cross to Lieutenant Colonel Henry Mucci and Captain Robert Prince. MacArthur will later say of the raid, "No incident of the campaign in the Pacific has given me such satisfaction as the release of the POWs at Cabanatuan. The mission was brilliantly successful." All Ranger officers are awarded the Silver Star, while each enlisted man receives the Bronze Star. Every Filipino guerrilla involved in the operation is also later awarded the Bronze Star in 1947. The US Army reimburses local civilians who lent their buffalo carts to the raid. Eduardo Hoson, Juan Pajota, and the Filipino resistance fighters have more than proven their ability in open combat. The Cabanatuan camp is overrun by units of the 6th Army days after the raid. In the nearly 3 years it was open, 2,656 American prisoners of war died at the prison camp. Many were buried in the same fields that the Rangers crawled over during their approach. Following the war, the camp commandant is convicted of war crimes and sentenced to life in prison. Most of the rescued prisoners will arrive back in the United States in March of 1945, where they receive a hero's welcome and letters from President Roosevelt. The end of Roosevelt's letter reads, "You have fought valiantly in foreign lands and have suffered greatly. May God grant each of you happiness and an early return to health." Check out Free Cash using my link in the description below or QR code on screen and get a $10 bonus on your first offer. This offer is valid for sign-ups.
Alright. Well, that's the last video I got, so that, well, it's not the last video I got, but the video I had queued up next was...
Honestly, to me, it does look like you could use some different RCS. These are pretty weak and electrically hungry.
Yeah. They're better than the ones I had before. But, yeah, let's head back to Enceladus. Enceladus Prime, specifically. Not the planet, just the station orbiting it. And it sucks that I didn't have a claim beacon. I could have put a claim around that moonlet so I could come back.
They're actually 50k a node weaker. 80.
They are? Oh. Well, I'm pretty sure I got better performance. Maybe they're weaker, but they're just better aimed. I think that was what the description implied, I think. All right, let's see about that spaceship. And, like, pay our employee. Let's do that first. There we go. All right. The dealer. How do I sell? Wait. How do I see the ships that I have? Promotional information. I don't want to trade in.
Fleet.
Right. Trader's Faith.
Also pay your crew.
I did. First developed and flown near the end of the 22nd century, the venerable K-37 TNTRL has become the de facto workhorse of the ring. Oh, it's the same kind of ship I've got? It's got different equipment. It looks different.
No, you didn't.
I didn't? Well, I clicked the button. The button's grayed out. I gotta get this guy's QR code off my screen. There, we'll get rid of that. All right. Yeah, it's clicked. I don't know. All right. Fleet. Trader's Faith. Simple and robust design has proven over the decades to have the kind of reliability and maintainability that's vital to the thousands of captains and crew who call these well-loved vessels home. A prototype of the K-44 MHFTR with only a few units ever built. Designed as a replacement for the K-37 TNTRL, the K-44 featured a much longer cargo bay and built-in MPD generators to provide power to the ship. The magnetoplasma dynamic generators weren't reliable enough for service, and most prototypes still used standard-issue turbines instead. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if I should switch to this ship. It has a microwave emitter.
Oh, you don't have enough to pay them. Downside of getting expensive crew.
Oh. Yes, the downside of hiring high-income employees is that you have to pay them a lot. I don't? I guess not. Alright, well... let's see. Do I want to switch to the K-44? It's heavier. Holds the same crew. But it'll have more cargo storage. Wait, okay. Wait. So okay, no, it doesn't have a high-stress hard point. I think that's a deal breaker. Yeah.
This ship is pretty good, and I'd recommend fixing it first, as you'll get a decent bit out of that damaged equipment.
Yeah, I like the, what is it called? The one that, like the front-facing engine. I really like that one. You need a high-stress hard point for that. But this one has 4 low-stress. So you were saying, yeah, switch to it. And then it won't fly. So I gotta go to repairs. Fix, and fix. I mean, we could take it on a dive and just see how I like it. Because once we get a, yeah, fuck it. Let's deliberately make this run different from my last run where I stuck with my, my K-37. And I used the whatchamacallit, the front-facing engine. Yeah, let's sell Bronze Impulse. Okay. Oh my god, that's a lot of money. Wait, okay. What is the sale value of Trader's Faith? I gotta switch. Oh, I can't sell Trader's Faith while it's under repair. Well, can you tell me the value? No? No, I just gotta go fuck myself? Okay. Wait. Oh. Oh, wow. Okay, Trader's Faith is worth $1 million.
It shows you in the top right, 1,056,000.
Is it selling at a premium because it's a rare prototype? Like, okay, what do you think? Should I stick with Bronze Impulse or switch to Trader's Faith? Because it would be cool. But it doesn't have a high-stress hardpoint. And, like, $1 million can make a big difference. In fact, actually, I don't know, making $1 million on our second day of the playthrough would actually kind of ruin the pacing of the game. Yeah, so I think...
The hull itself is worth a bit more, but everything else is worth the same as if it were fitted to any other ship.
Yeah. Alright, I think I will sell Bronze Impulse just as soon as Trader's Faith is actually fixed. We'll do that in the beginning of the next stream.
You could always strip everything off of Bronze Impulse and keep it. You'd get about 200k.
Okay. Why would I do that? Can I use the spare ship for something later? Because I was wondering back when I played this, like, are they ever going to add a feature where you can, like, you go from mining yourself to hiring people to mine for you? But I don't see anything like that. Yeah, all right, well, we will, I think we'll revisit this game next week. Probably, maybe we'll make it when I don't have anything to, when I don't have a software project on Thursdays. Maybe we'll play Delta V. I gotta stop uhing. I gotta get an zapper, also a square zapper. Maybe I'll build that next. Well, it won't be next because I got no money.
Having crew fly your ships as wingmen is planned. The reason you keep multiple ships is if you don't want to spend a long time repairing your main ship, you can use that instead.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. But yeah, that's all we have for tonight. So let's look for somebody to raid. Who is live on YouTube right now? YouTube. Pippa's alive. Who else? Maybe I should get in the habit of, like, raiding into smaller streamers. Tetris Attack. You know what? Let's go for, okay. On YouTube, we'll go for Kiki Pion. And let's see who's live on Twitch.
Thanks for the stream.
Yep. Thank you for coming out. Kiki Pion. Okay, she doesn't have a... See, I think for Twitch, we'll raid into Mr. JJ Mez. All right. Raid. JJ Mez. Oh, this guy really needs to get a easier to spell name. All right, that's that set up. YouTube folks. Oh, and you know, make sure you follow, subscribe, all that, of course.
Hey.
If you'd like to see me play this game or other games that I play ever again. Ever again? I don't know why I put an ever in there. Okay. How do I stream? How do I do anything? Stream settings. Edit. Customization. Redirect. Do I have redirect permissions into the person? Yes, I do. Okay. All right. Have fun with our various raid targets, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.